Hello everybody, I am here with John.
Hello.
Kali. We're down here at the hub. Today is the 19th of November, I believe.
19th.
And we are here just finishing up distribution for evacuees, and it's almost time, starting at 6 o'clock, for us to do our community potluck dinner. So we're starting to set up for that. You guys can see we got some space back here. You guys can come and join us. Come on open for everybody. So if you guys are around, you can see us, come on down. So yeah, we're gonna tell you guys about what we got going on today. You know, there's some volcanic signals we can talk about. You know, they're not anything super new or exciting. You know, so it's kind of the same story there. You know. Dane and I had a chance today to go around Leilani to go to several residences and check on some of the steam cracks, and we have something to tell you guys about that as well, about how hot the steam is, where it is, the patterns we've seen today in a small area. Kind of keep analyzing what we can find, for weeks to come. But we covered a small area today in Leilani, and we'll share that with you guys. And apart from that, we had, go through an outline kind of style here. We had a housing fair this past weekend in Kīlauea, which did not have USGS actually, after all.
Oh.
But it did have planning department and housing and county and lots of other,
Lots of people there?
I would not say there were lots of people.
Okay.
There were people there.
All right.
I feel like it probably could have been more traffic there.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard to find. It didn't seem like it was a not everyone had heard about it, right? I kind of wonder about who we're talking about tonight. Here, we didn't hear about it here, right? At a place like this, people are coming here and maybe didn't hear about that housing fair. I know that there were some issues with the scheduling and the timing and all that. Maybe it was just a matter of getting the distribution of information. I'm not sure how that happened, but also someone else mentioned what's different if you have a housing fair for people of Pahoa in Kīlauea.
Yeah.
How many do you really expect to show up in Kīlauea? It's not actually the town that we're coming from. So those are kind of good points.
It was good. I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, it happened. It was a lot of people did a lot of work. Hydar did a lot of work. To kind of get everyone together. One thing that I thought, the reason that I wanted to go and what drew me the most and still captivates me the most was the talk story session. Yeah. That was held there. So there were interviews conducted. We've heard that those guys may actually come by tonight. I don't see anyone set up here quite yet. But if anyone wants to record your story for posterity,
so they were recording these.
Yeah,
that's great.
So cool. The way it works is that
very cool.
You can start telling your story, and if at any point you decide you're not comfortable, you can just withdraw it and just stop it, and you never release it. But otherwise, you could tell your story, on video or in written form.
Cool.
Either way, it'll be documented.
That's awesome. That's really cool stuff.
So I've been putting it out there, and I'll put it out here with you guys as well. That. It's important to me and to many of us that this information, all these stories, kind of live on longer than what this initial agency collecting them is planning to do with them, which is to try to convince government of what needs to be done as part of this recovery process. That's what some people in government are going to use this for. Yeah. There are many others of us that think this needs to be used as a historical record.
Yeah, for posterity.
And so I encourage everyone to put the story out, put it down in some way, whether it's with these guys or whether it's even emailing it to us or whatever it takes. Make sure it gets documented. Why you guys still remember what's going on? Why you remember the important parts? The details of what went down and that massive chaos of those months back then. But so yeah, because I think for years to come, what we put down now on paper and video is going to be the story disruption for the 5th generation from now, the 6th generation from now. Things that will be forgotten between now and then, right?
Yeah, so already. Now is the time.
Yeah.
So my computer, the screen just went out this weekend. I need to find someone who can extract all of my journal from the whole eruption and all of my notes and all the writing I've done. I can't access on my computer. So there you go. How important is it to document these things and save these memories? So hopefully I'll be able to save all the data that's on my broken computer.
Back them up on the cloud.
Back them up on the cloud. I'm not very very good with technology and stuff, but yeah.
Dropbox, it's amazing.
Even looking at some of my journal entries, because I tried to keep a journal through the eruption, there's all kinds of things I don't remember consciously right away. So document. Everybody should document everything they can recall, because it'll, down the line, it's so interesting. It'll tell the story like that.
Yeah. So then along those lines, if you guys can't make it tonight or any other time, if you do want to do something like a video capture and like make it so that it's shared the right ways, and you can always look something I want to do as well, right? For myself, and I'm sure whoever else is around. I've got a camera, I got a tripod, so we can do it.
And we can put them on trackers too.
We can put them on track.
Yeah, put them on a flight tracker and
right.
preserve it that way. I mean, then it gets more seen as opposed to just putting it out on yourself or whatever. It's just more visibility.
And it could be that.
How's it?
Yeah. How's it? And it could be that we can publish that kind of thing anonymously if you don't want your information on something like that's going to last forever kind of thing. So that's what we find. So like whatever you guys need.
Get one of those voice changers
to be comfortable. Like with putting it, what needs to be put out there, so that people can learn from this, and who isn't dealing with this same scenario down the line again. At least not without eyes open. Let's think about it this way, right? How cool would it be if we could have actually watched the counts of 55 eruption this year?
Right.
Yeah. And actually looked at that for details and information and kind of analyze things. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
The next eruption, whenever it happens to be, if it happens in 60 years again, they will still want this information from today.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So for me, that's what was most important part of the housing fair that I got out of it personally.
Okay.
I'll ask Dane shortly what he thought. I kind of came there already with this, and this is why I want people to say what they're saying, what they're. Make sure that this is actually happening, because the longer it goes on without these stories, the more worried I get that we're gonna lose some stuff no matter what.
Yep.
Right. But let's capture as much as we can now. Right. So
totally. Definitely.
The main thing I wanted to get out of it was talking to the emergency relief agency. Civil Defense wasn't there, USGS wasn't there, which disappointing, but we did have some people there. EMA was there, the Department of Building was there. We had Department of Housing, some planning departments. So we did have some county representation. The main thing I was looking for was, what's the holdup on a lot of things going on, especially in Leilani with the lack of ability to get building permits specifically.
Right.
So the main thing I was able to gather is the Civil Defense in of themselves are working on a risk assessment for the recent eruption. We don't know who's officially collaborating on this thing. We know who's not, basically, and the list of who's not been asked anything to collaborate is much bigger than the non-existent list that I've heard of.
Can you give us who's not on the list?
The building department and all the engineers there aren't involved. They haven't even able to do assessments on structural damage. The Civil Defense went ahead and figured they didn't need the engineers at the building department to do that kind of assessment, so they're just kind of shouldering a lot of the responsibility.
Okay.
So it's kind of on the sketchy side to me.
Is USGS helping them?
I'd hope so. I hope so.
I don't know what more USGS can really do.
Yeah,
they've already made their risk assessment when they assess our level of alert.
Exactly.
And they've already alerted us to the hazards that exist out
there. But it comes back to Civil Defense's, or not Civil Defense's, Mayor Harry Kim's last emergency proclamation, the 5th one, where it says in it explicitly that these rules are being put in place and will be maintained because USGS cannot say with absolute certainty, in caps, that the eruption will not resume. And that's just something that USGS will never say. That's just absurd.
That's non-scientific.
That's absurd.
In the science of geology, that's not something you really can say very long.
And to task a body like USGS with that kind of task, that's
like
absurd.
Passing the buck.
It's passing the buck.
It's them, it's not us.
It's exactly. So
I don't want to get political.
If USGS is involved, their involvement,
I doubt they even want to be involved.
Yeah, after something like that,
it's like passing the blame onto into their court when it needn't
They've done what they've done. They've already said that it's at yellow. We don't get to yellow on Kīlauea often.
And they've got plenty of
ever
other
before.
things.
Yeah, like
Their
that's
job is to keep studying the volcano, not right. I don't know.
yeah. So that's where we're at. Is the county's doing a risk assessment. We don't know what it's going to entail or what it means. But we do know things like the building department, they're not able to issue permits explicitly because they're waiting on that assessment.
Weird.
They don't know if they'll be able to afterwards, after it's released, or if they'll be prohibited like they're going to say, oh yeah, no more building in Lava Zone 1. Building department doesn't actually know. They've been left out of that loop. Yeah. So like there's just an insane amount of civil defense. Every agency I was talking to, it comes back to, oh, it's civil defense is doing this. Civil defense is doing this. So you kind of start to see the pattern in everything.
So I got something. And that's that the mayor actually has the control over civil defense. So if you want things to move forward, contact the mayor's office. Don't even bother with civil defense. Bill Hansen. I hear his name all the time. He's a great guy. He'll take you out to your property. He'll hold your hand and make sure you're safe. He'll give you permission to go to your own private property. But he's not really involved in assessing the actual situation. So if you have information for them, contact the mayor's office. Sorry, Harry. I hate to have your office get bombarded, but that's what I've been told. Risk assessment also, if you're going to do a risk assessment, you have to have a risk assessment for the geothermal plant. They have to be the same numbers. You can't have a risk assessment that says we're not giving permits to build, but we're giving permits for the geothermal to come back. So that's my 2 cents. Sorry, you got me going.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so I mean,
your voice must be heard.
We're glad to hear from community members, right? Especially you guys who are all down in the area. I kind of live vicariously.
Yeah, like me personally, I don't have a stake in those issues because I don't live down here, but I do understand the conversation. So I don't have a.
You might.
Well, maybe, yeah.
If you're in Lava Zone 1 or 2, you might actually have a stake in. If you live in Leilani, you have a stake in.
Right. Everyone down here.
If you're downhill from where the lava could erupt, you have a stake in.
Yeah. Good call.
And we know that.
Yep. That's been talked about too much at too many community meetings that they're talking about.
You have a stake in it.
The prohibiting the ability to build Lava Zones 1 and 2 has yet to been taken off the table. That's still, I haven't heard anything to suggest that that's been revoked and that's not a train of thought anymore. And the building department now waiting for this risk assessment. It's like, are we gearing for something? What are we bracing for? What's this risk assessment that I have no idea what it's going to entail? What is it going to actually say?
Weird.
Well, I mean, okay, I don't want to get political either necessarily, but I'll tell you guys what I observe, right? We observe in action, right? And when we see a plan, and we're waiting for the county to find a way to justify that plan.
Yeah.
So to me, what we should expect out of this assessment is justification for what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, just like fairly simply, right? What you guys said before, right? Is the standard that they're holding is unreasonable. The county's holding it, like
absolute
standard
certainty.
Absolute certainty.
That's standard.
Just absolute certainty wasn't enough. We got to put it in caps. So people know that that's the point.
We've talked about for months how uncertain all of this stuff is, that we can't get rid of the uncertainty, and that sucks. But yeah, to ask for absolute certainty is just not something that they would be prepared to do.
It's not something that's part of the real life. Okay?
Right.
Like, I'm not absolutely certain when I go down to town and I'm going to get there by 9 o'clock.
Right.
So,
okay, like,
I remember back in the beginning of the eruption when PGV was all the talk and the pentane and all that, we didn't know much until Tom Travis at the EMA showed up. And then one of the reporters had the audacity to ask him at one of the interviews, what can you say with absolute certainty? And he says, well, I can say with absolute certainty, I'm here right now. Other than that, that's not really a question for an engineer.
Yeah.
And that's the correct answer from a scientific standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just absurd.
So yeah, it is concerning, right? You can kind of see, even though I have less stake, I'll call it less stake. you know,
Less steak.
less steak than everyone down here. You know, I'm concerned by the pattern that I see, which seems to be, yes, that, you know, it's true that there is a good argument to be said that maybe people shouldn't have been living in Zone 1 in the first place.
Right, but...
In the first place.
Yeah.
In the first place was 50 years ago.
Right.
So now we're past that in the first place. Now they've already been living there for 50 years.
Right. There's a whole
President
neighborhood living
So-
there for 50 years.
You know, whatever the ideal plan would have been, you know, no one lives here in Ireland, like, let's not build there ever. Great. That's
Right.
great in theory. But people are there now, and they've been living there now, and there's a whole history, there's a whole culture tied to this area. You
Can't go back in time.
prevent people from going back to their roots, essentially, right?
You can't.
That's the hard place that they're in, right? And there's no easy way for them to say, okay, well, here's how we get out of it,
Right.
Yeah.
right? No matter what they say, there is someone who's gonna get the short stick.
Right.
You know, there's no way around that. So they're, you know, the problem was made 50 years ago. We're gonna pay for it now. You know, whoever was in office now was not in office 50 years ago. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you know, that's the reality of having been in office here and not realizing where you were and the potential that's happening, and not having had to put our organization to deal with all this as it happened. Now we're dealing with it after the fact.
Yeah, and for the geologists, they're like, well, yes, we know that's the rift zone. What do you want us to say about it? We know that neighborhood is on the rift zone. That we didn't have anything to do with that.
Right.
Where they can only tell you about what the volcano's doing, about how the volcano works. So you can't ask the geologists directly to weigh in on some of these social issues, because that's not what they're doing. That's not what they do.
They all have opinions as
They
individuals,
do,
but that's
as
not
individuals.
their mission.
That's not their mission as the organization that they are. Yeah, and so they're in kind of the bind, like, well, yes, we know that neighborhood is on the rift zone. Here's what we can offer you about the hazards that could have developed, the risks that are there. But they're never going to get to a point where they're going to say the rift zone with absolute certainty will not erupt again.
Yeah.
They will.
Exactly. Yeah, that'll be our April Fool post.
Oh, I got some doozies waiting for April 1st. I can tell you, some big old ones waiting.
Yeah, so that's yeah, you're absolutely right. That's something you can't say. The rift zone is with absolute certainty will never erupt.
Right.
You know, even within X amount of time.
Right.
It doesn't matter what amount of time you pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
say
have
that.
that. You don't have absolute certainty.
Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to sort of reemphasize is your point you brought up, Teddy, which is absolutely right. These standards need to be held across the board, right? It's something we've heard, you know, I think it's worth saying it again. Exactly, right? Whatever's happening at PGV, which is we know that they're actually wrapping back up to reopen. That's been their plan from the very beginning of
It's not a surprise.
you know, designing a place. It was designed to survive an eruption and reopen afterwards. So at the very beginning, that's always been the plan. They haven't changed the plan, and they're still going through that, right? So, but absolutely, it's right that whatever standard we're holding for Leilani needs to be the same standard, and vice versa, right? Because how can it be safe for one and not the other, right? You're gonna tell me it's safer for run an engineering power plant than for someone who will sit in their living room watching TV?
But again, we're talking about
so-
a county that, for the viewing area, which we were said that would happen in 2 weeks, that still hasn't happened after 4 months. That just the whole thing is just that viewing area. They said that we require that there be handicap accessible bathrooms.
Right.
Right. Like,
Right.
you're not being serious. This isn't a serious conversation. This is hiding that you don't want to do it.
It was clearly obstruction, and the reason we say that is because every viewing area in the past that the county set up
Yeah.
has not had handicap accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been porta potties on the road where you park,
Yeah. At the bottom
like
of the
not
craters.
like on a trail, not at the end of the trail, not any, you know what I mean? Like
And handicap
even
accessible.
in Kalapana, like there's porta potties like where you park the car
Yeah, and they were saying
before you
they,
had to walk 5 miles.
and they said they wanted it to be handicap accessible too. It's like, what part of Kalapana was that made a thing? When was this the new issue that we need to have done? It's just, we're just going to create these things because they sound good. We have a reasonable deniability here, and we can just make it not do it and act like we did.
So, anyways, maybe that's enough about the housing fair and the county and all
Yeah,
that for now.
that was
you
like
know,
a rant. Sorry.
No, I think it's relevant. That's the kind of things. I think we covered it in a way that people want to see it covered right now. That's the discussion that's on the table.
Yeah. That's what the community is dealing with now, right? So if anyone is not in the community, if you guys are watching from farther away, you know, like that's what the community is dealing with now. So we're kind of talking through and working through now. So that's what we share with you guys. Other than that, maybe we can turn to the data now, right? And then maybe after that we can talk a little bit about the Steam and, you know, kind of do it that way. So let me turn the camera here, you guys. Let me boot up the machine here and show you guys the earthquakes we got. So, okay. Oh, cancel that. Over the last day, this is the last one day, you guys can see the earthquake pattern, right? There's nothing very alarming there. It's kind of a similar pattern as before. Let me go back to the last 7 days because we see a little more interesting things happening there. Let me push that button there. So, all right, so for the last 7 days, we have our summit earthquake still happening, our south flank earthquake still happening, deep Pahala earthquake still happening. We had a little bit of a swarm over, you know, a little cluster over by Mauna Loa, kind of the same pattern as what we saw before, you know, so no eruption happening right now. I would probably venture as far as to say we should expect that volcano to reawaken very soon.
Do you have absolute certainty about that?
I'm going to say yes.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
I'm just in a different definition of soon.
Yep.
Soon, TM.
So.
Totally.
But yeah, so, you know, we should expect to have, you know, kind of flare-ups, so I'll call them, like, you know, on Mauna Loa as it kind of comes back to life, you know, on a lead-up to what we expect will be actually the final telling signs of an eruption upcoming, which is not what this is. You know, it's still kind of the adjustment phase before that could come up, right?
Right, and I was just reading, you know, there are some terminology. They use the word earthquake swarm means a certain number of earthquakes have happened in that location within a certain number of hours. Yeah. And I forget the number exactly, but so this kind of thing we can call more of a cluster.
They were calling it
than a true swarm, but when we start seeing the true swarms, it will be many earthquakes.
Yeah,
and the swarm is linked to the eruption cycle.
USGS called that thing officially, these types of swarms on Mauna Loa, they called it a flurry. Earthquake flurry was the way they described these
and
things.
They probably have a definition of what they mean by flurry.
So that's what I'm going to go with. That was a small flurry that lasted about a day and had some pretty shallow quakes with some decent magnitudes, but nothing really special in terms of what we've seen from that very specific area. That's one of the most active seismic areas along Mauna Loa.
So short story, nothing to worry about there yet. And basically that's the kind of the pattern of the earthquakes. We kind of see that maybe the south flank is actually still popping off a little bit here and there, right? It's not quiet. That's probably the you know, to me, the biggest takeaway right now, given what we've been talking about for the last week or two or however long it's going to extend the theme backwards in time. So let's switch now to the tilt. I'll show you guys the most recent tilt. Let's wait for it to load here. All right, so most recent.
Cool, still down.
Double load it here just to make sure. Ah! How's it going, buddy? All right, so here is Cool was still down. There is a summit, pretty flat. So let's look at the one we actually can see for the last month here at the summit. Right, so what you guys can see is that since the weekend, there was that kind of weird. We weren't really sure what to make out of that, but it's still not really clear. The scheme of it, the scale of it is not very big. Whether it was something or not can be debated, but since then it's been pretty flat apart from daytime.
Very flat.
Yeah. So, yeah, really very, very flat. So, so
and then when we have seen it inflate the last 3 times, then it does a deflation cycle right afterwards.
Right afterwards, yeah. So it seems like the summit still can't hold any pressure from what we can see. You know, on a rift zone, so upper rift zone. This is escape road, There's been some correspondence a little bit to the you know, I don't know, like these cycles, right up here we see this big deflation. We have a little anomaly in this signal here, and then here We have a little anomaly. Well, not quite as noticeable there. But, you know, there was, yeah, some interesting. Here, there's this one. It's interesting. She's not quite at anything up there.
Yeah.
So, hard to say what's going on there, you know, but the scale is 0.5 to 1, so, you know, maybe if we look at the, you know, like let's look at the straight north data, the baseline of it maybe is rising, right, so maybe, you know, might be adjustment happening still in the upper part of upper connection, you know, upper east rift zone. So tilting to the north and to the west, basically. Based on this, right? So farther down on the south flank, moving by Apile, we can actually, you know, this was an interesting one. Like that's one of the deflation events there. I think that might be one there. Right here. Right in there, yeah. That thing more or less matches that one right there. Kind of matches that one, the small one that maybe you're not sure about. Matches that little wiggle. So that's interesting, right? So
yeah,
maybe this tells us something.
Yeah, one more of those right there. It looks like too, and that was at the beginning of this one. That DI.
Yeah.
So maybe that is something worth keeping an eye on.
So I mean,
a little bump.
This right. It's kind of at this lowest point. So yeah, so you know, we speculated that this might be some wiggling on a south flank possibly. So I don't know. It's hard, you know, if that's the case there, but that, you know, it's almost a similar pattern.
Yeah.
You know, at the side. So you know, could extrapolate that might be some movement, right? At these things. Although it's hard to say that, you know, the movement was something that stayed moved.
It doesn't really show up on GPS that way.
Doesn't really show on GPS very well, yeah. And you know, I'm still not quite clear, like, you know, what threshold exists between a tilt and GPS, right? How much tilt can you show before you should see something on GPS as well?
Yeah, I'm starting to get a feel for it, but you're right. It's really hard
It's less, right? You know, there is, I would say, likely some gray zone.
Yeah, there is. And I'd say that,
and that's where we are.
And since we're talking about gray zones, that brings us to Jonica, which is a gray zone right now to me. This thing it definitely was inflating up until about the first of the month, and then since then it's pretty much leveled out. And now this should be the west.
The west,
the west. Yeah, we got a little bit of movement there, and it's interesting because it's a trend change, but it's very small. And on the GPS, when we see it, we're seeing basically the verticals leveling out. The east-west component has moving to the west and now moving to the east slightly.
And it's flattening out a little bit. We'll look at that next.
Yeah.
So actually, the blue one is northwest, and the green one is northeast.
Okay. It's hard to visualize.
But in any case, yeah, it's definitely gotten flat right now.
Yeah.
So let's go to GPS next.
It's enough so that it's hard to say that that's inflation right there. It's hard to say that that's inflation now at the end of that.
So our short signals, weak plots are not showing anything too much. We're not seeing a whole lot here at the summit with Kahuna. We don't see. Well, let's look a little more close like this. Is a plot wiggling here at the end?
Oh, you're talking about GPS. I was talking about that tilt.
Oh, on the tilt.
That tilt
looks flatter. But it looked like it was coming down, and then it got flat again.
Yeah, right?
Rather than coming down.
Continuing to come down. We'll see if that's last for a few days or not. That's going to be the
we look at these
time to tell.
So back here at this bottom end, it's not quite clear if this thing might be wiggling a little bit here, you know, instead of just going straight down. So that's going to have to keep an eye on, but it's not clear yet what's happening there.
That's the distance.
This is the distance across the rift zone at Pool.
Yep.
Yeah. Now single stations, you know, the trend, maybe, I don't know, if you guys think there's something particular to look at, the Jonica one probably, right? But
yeah.
Most of this stuff hasn't changed over here.
Yeah, that's the spot on Jonica that we were watching that change. It looks like it was going to full reversal and start heading east. And now it seems to be flattening out again, but you see there's more scatter in the data right now. So we need to, with the GPS over time we get a better idea. So we just need to watch more of the points be recorded on there. But it looked like it was totally changing the trend and starting to rise, which would mean it was moving east. And now it looks like it almost might be flattening out again. So
It's hard to say. It's not going west, so
Maybe
we can
the
say
slight
that.
west.
That is
Yeah.
not moving west.
it's either not moving west
Yeah.
or maybe
It's also not moving north.
it's also not really moving north.
Yeah, maybe not moving south either.
Yeah, no. It's
Maybe not moving south either.
that comes back to that gray area of like, where's this zone where we can see the changes in GPS, or we can see the changes in tilt, but they're too sensitive for the GPS to register.
Well, and the vertical
It's also slightly moving up still.
slightly
Slightly.
moving up. it
Not
looks
as fast.
like. Not
Yeah,
as
and
fast. Definitely
The latest
slowed
point
down
looks,
on that one.
The latest point looks like it's higher too than the point that was yesterday's point.
It did.
Because this updates daily. These ones, they're a daily point.
Right. So yeah, those are interesting changes that we're keeping track of over at Jonica. This is farther up the rift. And the signals here at the far right end are not changing very much. They're kind of keeping the same trends. Right? Not a whole lot of difference in any of these. We talked about these in more detail last time. So I won't go beat that horse again. But maybe here in POC, maybe something that looks slightly different in the last few days, slightly more stable.
Yeah.
It's the only spot, really.
Flatter.
Yeah.
Jacuzzi did that too. It looked like.
Did it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a really small scale. That one stopped putting out data. This one, is there maybe a change right there at the very end?
Oh yeah. Almost looks like it's dipping down.
Definitely wiggling a little bit. And this one, this is the Kanano Yohamo. It's interesting. We're the next set of stations uprift from Pu'o'o. Farther west, these ones are not showing anything.
Yeah, these are really small scales.
Small scales, and then
But the thing to
South flank.
reiterate about the GPS is it is an absolute measurement of movement by GPS, you know, so we're looking at teeny tiny changes. The tilt is giving us a relative change. The GPS is like the land actually moved a little bit, and this is what we're keeping track of. So over time, we can get a better judgment of what the trend is with GPS. So we just watch it develop, and we get a better idea over a longer length of time.
Yeah, and looking at the GPS data on like a daily or a 5-minute cycle, even with a ton of normalization, it's still pretty scattered and pretty all over the place. So there's these are safer bets, these GPS, the longer term ones.
so these two stations down here, you know, Cayena Point, looks like it's, you know, these might be south flank stations. You know, looks like maybe it looks more stable in the last few days than the days before that, maybe.
Interesting.
Right, so that looks like slightly more stabilized, and this one is Pua Point, right? Possibly a slight rebound almost, you know, within the noise right there.
Yeah, kind of looks like it.
So, probably, you know, all these other changes that I'm seeing here are not like really anything that I can see as being, whoops, there we go. As being impactful, you know, for the eruption, signaling a change in eruption, you know, so.
Slow, quiet change is all that's happening. It's interesting.
So, you know, without going into all the kind of can of worms we've been doing the past few times, let's maybe just leave that at that for today, and we can move on. Let's talk about what we did in Leilani today, Dane, which is just briefly intro is that we went around and measured steam cracks, and maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the procedure we used and some of our results. Turn this on, see if you can see it. You went to light on the circuit.
All right, so we went around Leilani and we started measuring all these steam vents that everybody's been seeing. You know, we measured them up on Highway 130 before. So now we're measuring all of Leilani. So we're measuring the fissure vents. We're measuring any crack that steams. We're measuring just anything interesting that we can find using thermal cameras and handheld thermometers with like leads that we put into the vents. So we went around to several different fissures and just cracks in between them. We would search for, with the thermal cameras, looking for the hottest areas in order to go check them with the handheld thermometer to get a better reading. So we do that a few times. We then record the hottest area that we find at a particular spot. So like Fissure 10, this is the hottest area we've seen. This is what we're recording. Side crack off Fissure 10, this is the hottest side crack, so this is the one we're recording. But basically we were able to figure out kind of like a range of temperatures for steam. And what we're looking at is any vent that's steaming. There's some variations depending on humidity, dew point, and amount of rains, depending on how much steam you see. But in general, you're looking at a steam vent, it's going to be between 150 and 250 degrees, mostly around like 170 Fahrenheit. Yeah, 150. It's going to be mostly around like 170 to 200 most of the time. Most of the steam vents. Smaller, it's going to be less. And some of the bigger ones are going to be more. But the real interesting thing is that the hottest areas on the flow field do not have steam. They have no steam around them. They're near steam, but they have no steam. All you'll get for a signal of that this place is crazy hot is that there'll be a heat shimmer, like a little radiating heat that messes with your line of sight. That's it. That's all you're gonna get. You can be right near these things and not notice that they're there if you're not looking for that shimmer. And where it shimmers, oh buddy, does it get hot. We've seen 300, we've seen 500, we've seen 850 degrees Fahrenheit out of these cracks that, or they're not even cracks, they're just places on the ground, hot spots in the cinder that are just crazy hot. And some of them don't even have the airflow to be pushing up the hot air to let you know that this is hot. But like what we're seeing is there's spots out there that you step in, then you find out it's hot.
Yeah, there's like a patina, like kind of covering the surface of the tephra, right? Like a how can I describe that?
Skin coat.
Patina. Like this little like a thin shell, right?
Okay.
It's like trapping the heat inside, and once you like step and break that, it allows a path for all that steam to come out, right?
Hello.
So we saw like one spot where actually, I stepped on the ground, and after we stepped, we could see steam coming from the footprint.
Yeah.
And we measured it,
And it was 180 degrees in the footprint.
Yeah.
Like in the footprint that we just stepped on, you couldn't tell it was hot at all. You step in it, oh look, 180.
yeah, and the ground around the footprint.
Yeah. And one thing that's kind of important is that some of these steam vents that actually steam, right? They're going to be putting out more steam than others. So like Fissure 3 in Leilani comes to mind. There's some fissures behind, some vents behind 8 that come to mind. These things steam, but some of them are going to be like relatively cool. They're going to only be like 150, even though they're going to be putting out a big old plume. It'll be visually impressive, but it's not all that hot. But there's some out there that'll be like 220, 230 and be putting out a big amount of steam. Those things can scold you. Those are just hot. The amount of water that comes out of those things, heat of that temperature, it blows in your face. You're just, backing off, putting something up. Even though it's only 200, then you're over the 500 degree area and it's nothing. But it's that hot on the ground, and underneath that ground it's that hot. So there's some subtleties. It's not just, oh, there's steam, therefore that's the hot spot. Not that at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because without doing any math, right? Like you kind of just consider how much heat, how much energy would it take in moles to like heat up that volume of water. It may actually be the same amount of energy in both spots, but because you have so much more water as a carrier to absorb all that heat, it's lowering the temperature and making it visually impressive. So maybe the ground is actually like, that's the number we should use. Using is 500, and where there's water, it's making steam and coming out at 150 or 200.
That makes sense.
But actually, everywhere, it's really more about 500 or 800 or whatever it is. Our high points of measurements are, right? So just an idea to throw out there, right? There is a lot of heat, energy in that steam cloud. It's just not hot because there's so much steam.
Yeah.
Right.
It's at the boiling point of water rather than higher.
Right. Yeah, and so we'll be putting out all the data that we collected today. we'll be putting that out on Hawaii Tracker with a little write-up about like how the steam's working, like some of the important factors for residents that have to live with it, what to consider, what it means to see steam, what it means on a day where it's steaming crazy compared to the day before. What does that mean?
Right.
We'll be covering all that on a post on Hawaii Tracker, Philip and myself. So it'll be kind of all you need to know about steam type of thing.
Great. Yeah, and it's interesting. I see a comment from Tony Silva about from that boat. I see smoke in multiple areas, and you told me today about what you and John saw the last time you were walking out.
Oh, yeah.
As far as signal coming from the ocean, will you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, so we were, John and I, before we had thought we'd seen a steam plume coming from the ocean.
The coast.
Yeah, and it looked pretty convincing. We watched it for occasionally every few hours, and it looked pretty convincing.
Yep, just like a little ocean entry poofing steam at the seaside.
But it turns out when we went in last time on a hike, we went up to a point high enough to be able to look down onto the area, and we found that there was steam plumes coming from the heavy steam plumes coming from the delta, that huge lava delta coming inland of the coastline. But from the most angles that we were able to get from a decent amount of distance, it looked like it was coming from the coast. So there's steam coming off of many parts of this flow field still. And it can be, especially from a boat, it can be visually, like mess with you. And even from land, it can mess with you. Until you get that height on it, you can't really tell about what you're looking at. It's really weird. And you have to get fooled yourself to be like, wow, it gets you that hard.
Right, we were fooled, and when we finally saw it from the right vantage, we're like, oh, that's what we were looking at. It's way inland. So, totally fooled by it.
So yeah, that's just a little bit about steam. Yeah, just doing one quick word of warning, right? If anyone is around their house, around the cinder, right? You probably know not to be wearing hazardous footwear in the first place, right? But it's a little word of warning, right? If you step through the crust of the stuff, like in your flip flops, you could burn yourself.
Very badly,
badly in certain places, right? So it's hopefully obvious already. Stuff is sharp and glassy. There's points hairs all over the place. But just in case, just put it out there. Be really careful, like stepping through these crusts, for the hot spots below. Relatively speaking, like what we're talking about, 100, 250 is you're gonna survive that, right? But we're worried about the areas where maybe there's a spot that's 500, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not gonna be able to walk away from, right? That's kind of what I would worry about more.
And they're kind of rare, those super hot spots, but they are there.
Yeah.
They are there.
We did see some discoloration in some of those hot spots, right?
Yeah.
Not every discolored area is extremely hot, but
The ones that are
almost
hot
all extremely hot areas
are
discolored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Yeah.
So probably because the discoloration comes from some gas alteration, so there's a path for the gas to come out at some point. If that path is still open, then heat can come out of there still too. And if it's not, then it's done steaming and done being hot, and it's just discolored still. So that's kind of an arrangement.
Scott.
Scott
Wilson, the pilot.
So guys, we got all kinds of guys here. There's Luna, we got Scott and Lay over there, Andrew's here. We got lots of Ohana, the Calber is down over there with Kavi. We're just getting ready to probably blow a conch.
Yeah.
Right? So if you guys are in the area, come on down, it's not too late. Maybe the last thing we can connect close off with is some thoughts of thanks. Maybe
Oh, thanks.
some thoughts of thanks. Yeah, I don't know. Well, here's what I'll say. First of all, my thoughts the whole last week have been California, right? And so everything that's happened in Hawaii this year has been it's been major for us, of course, right? And we're so lucky we don't have dozens of people dead, right? Could have happened.
Yep.
Did happen in California. It's going to be more than dozens, actually. And,
80 was the last official.
Right. So I won't say the number because that's going to climb substantially. There's no point in guessing and all that, but clearly that's a tragedy that we avoided that part of it here. So, I can say we're very thankful that despite all the loss that we've suffered, despite the fact that, people are going to look back on this year and say, oh, 2018, what happened that year? Oh, that was a California year.
Yeah.
we're not going to call this the Hawaii year.
No,
This is the California year, right?
definitely.
So, as far as like aid coming our way to Hawaii, you know, federally compared to California, we can expect to get bumped down as well, right? So there's all kinds of things that kind of come from that. But bottom line, you know, I'm really glad. My heart's in California with everyone who's suffering there, and I'm really glad that here we didn't have to deal with that level of devastation, right? We don't have to. We're not pointing to government and saying you killed people, right? So you know, maybe more negative than I'm going to have it come off sounding, right? But I'm really thankful that, you know, despite all the loss that we've had very little loss of life, right? You know. And that we are in a position that we actually can recover now, right? As all the struggles that we have with the county, with, you know, whether it be the neighbors or want something different than what we want, you know, we're actually in a position to breathe and talk about it, right? So that's something, you know, as difficult as this is for everyone here in Hawaii, you know, we have like, you know, the events of California to kind of put us back in perspective proper, you know, not, you know, we've been a center, you know, of our own universe for a long time, you know, like, and rightfully so, right? But like now, maybe we can kind of shift our attention. That's the world's bigger than just here, right? So
It's a good way to wrap it up.
you guys want to add anything different, or you know,
I think that's really well said.
people who are here?
I'm thankful for my dogs and for the little place where I live and my friends and family, and I'm super thankful for everyone I met through the course of all this eruption and how much I've been inspired by all the people I've encountered because of all of this. So I'm thankful for that sense of community and being included in it. And yeah, so thank you.
Thanks, John. No?
Thankful that this is going to be quick here. And no, but it's seriously though, there's a ton to be thankful for, and I don't have time to go through it all, and I won't remember half of it if I try. Family, friends, the hub, everything. Like, there's a bunch to be thankful for amongst all the devastation, because there is still plenty of that going on, and we're still dealing with it. But yeah, it's just time to, you know, get some food, basically.
Yeah, guys. So
Pre-Thanksgiving.
You can look out behind us and see, you know, all the other thankful people around. So we will leave you guys here.
Every minute.
And
All right.
we'll talk to you guys again. I'm not sure exactly when, because I'm not sure if we're going to be open on Friday. I don't think we are.
I'll be on Kauai.
Yeah, well, John's traveling, anyways, but I believe that Friday after Thanksgiving we're not going to be open. I do believe that on Saturday is the parade in Kīlauea. I have to check what's
Too far ahead for me.
But I believe, we'll have to check on this, but I believe that there's a parade in Kīlauea this coming Saturday,
Okay.
and that the hub is taking part in it.
Awesome.
Oh. But we are not absolutely certain.
Well, it's on my calendar as this coming weekend.
Oh, okay. That's
There you go.
pretty
That's good enough.
I believe the weekend after that will be the first, that's the Pahoa parade, right? So there's two parades coming up.
Right.
There's a Hilo parade this coming weekend, and then the Pahoa parade the following weekend. And I believe the hub's involved in both, last I heard.
Okay.
So we'll look out for that. Look out for, you know, announcement from Honua, you know, if they, you know, post on there exactly what time it's going to be. I believe it's earlier in the morning, first thing in the morning kind of thing, you know, but we'll have to wait and see. Cool. So that's kind of what's upcoming, and then apart from that, back on Monday next week, a week from today.
Yeah.
Will be the next time that for sure we'll be around for updating you guys.
Yeah. Maybe get in one more. Who knows?
Maybe somewhere in between, and of course we'll have, you know, the dailies and the texts and all that stuff on Facebook that kind of goes on.
Yeah, Hawaii Tracker will have updates in the meantime between these. So check there, and we'll have that little write-up about the steam and the readings that we got today up there pretty soon. No guarantees. In a few days.
Yeah. All right, guys. So from the hub,
Happy Thanksgiving.
happy Thanksgiving, and stay classy.
Aloha.